Today we're talking about FDR, the guy who was president for 12 years, which, spoiler alert, is way more than the constitutional limit now. He's the president who saved America from the Great Depression, except maybe he didn't. We'll get to that. He's also the guy who put over 120,000 Japanese Americans in concentration camps, so it's complicated. We're going to figure out whether FDR was America's savior or just a really charismatic guy who happened to be president during World War II. Hint, it's both, because history is never simple, despite what your textbook wants you to think. So here's the thing about FDR. He almost never became president at all. In 1921, this guy who had literally everything going for him, rich family, Harvard education, political connections that would make today's politicians weep with envy, he got polio. And polio in 1921, that was basically a political death sentence. But here's where it gets interesting. And by interesting, I mean inspiring in a way that makes you feel bad about complaining when your Wi-Fi is slow. Instead of giving up, FDR spent years learning to walk again, or at least appear to walk. He literally built a therapy center in Georgia and became the poster child for fake it till you make it. Most Americans had no idea their president couldn't walk unassisted. This was before Twitter, obviously. But that struggle, it gave him something most politicians lack: actual empathy for people who were suffering.
This is preeminently the time to speak the truth, the whole truth, frankly and boldly. Nor need we shrink from honestly facing conditions in our country today. This great nation will endure as it has endured, will revive and will prosper. So first of all, let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself, nameless, unreasoning, unjustified terror, which paralyzes needed effort to convert retreat into advance.
Okay, so that quote is from March 1933, and the United States was basically falling apart. Unemployment was at 25%. That's 1 in 4 people without jobs, which makes today's economic problems look like a minor inconvenience. Banks were literally shutting down because people were so panicked they were withdrawing all their money and hiding it under their mattresses, which, to be fair, was probably not the worst investment strategy at the time. But FDR had this crazy idea. What if the president just talked to people, like directly, without going through newspapers or formal speeches? So he invented these fireside chats, basically the 1930s version of a podcast, except it was the radio, and millions of people actually listened. And it worked. Within days of his first chat, people started putting money back in banks. Turns out, when you're honest with people about how bad things are, they trust you more. Revolutionary concept, I know. So, FDR's solution to the Great Depression was basically to throw everything at the wall and see what stuck. This was called the New Deal, which sounds way more organized than it actually was. It was basically controlled chaos with really good marketing. The New Deal gave us Social Security, the Works Progress Administration, the Civilian Conservation Corps, and banking regulations that prevented another depression for, until 2008. Oh, and fun fact, Social Security was supposed to be temporary. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. It still exists today. But here's where things get complicated, because of course they do. FDR wasn't content with just being popular. He wanted to be right. So when the Supreme Court kept striking down his New Deal programs, he tried to pack the court with extra justices who would vote his way. Even his own party was like, dude, no, that's literally what dictators do. So that didn't work out. But the really bad thing FDR did, Executive Order 9066. After Pearl Harbor, he basically said, you know what? Let's put all the Japanese Americans in prison camps just in case some of them are spies. And by some of them, I mean he imprisoned 120,000 people, 2/3 of whom were American citizens. This wasn't based on evidence, it was based on racism and panic. In 1988, Congress literally apologized and called it a grave injustice, motivated by racial prejudice, war hysteria, and a failure of political leadership. So yeah, even presidents who save democracy can also violate the Constitution. History is fun like that. Then World War II happened, and suddenly FDR went from experimental domestic policy guy to leader of the free world. He helped create the United Nations, which still exists, worked with Churchill and Stalin, awkward dinner parties probably, and basically turned America into what he called the arsenal of democracy. And here's the plot twist. It wasn't the New Deal that ended the Great Depression, it was World War II. All that government spending on tanks and planes did what all the alphabet soup agencies couldn't quite manage, which raises uncomfortable questions about whether you need a war to fix an economy. So what did we do with Franklin D. Roosevelt? He created Social Security, saved democracy, and gave us national parks. He also violated the Constitution, tried to pack the Supreme Court, and imprisoned innocent people based on their race. The thing is, history doesn't give us perfect heroes or perfect villains, just complicated people making complicated decisions in complicated times. FDR shows us that you can simultaneously be a champion of democracy and a threat to it, sometimes in the same week. Maybe the real lesson isn't whether FDR was good or bad, but that in a democracy, we need to be constantly vigilant about power, even when it's being used by people we like, for things we agree with. Because as FDR himself proved, the line between saving democracy and undermining it is thinner than we'd like to think. And that is why we study history, not to worship dead presidents, but to learn how to do better next time. Thank you.